So Podbay, and I'm joined now by my co-host Matt Smith.
Good evening.
Well, Matt, it's just me and you today. Treg decided he wanted to spend time with his family because his sister's moving away. Like, who does
Worst.
that,
It's the worst.
right? So selfish.
No, I'll give him I'll give him a pass on this one. He's not lifting things this time, so I'll give him a pass.
Nope.
Family's important.
Well, he did say she was moving, so maybe she asked him to come lift up the heavy
That's
couch or
what it is.
something.
That's what it is, right? He got himself all greased up and everything. She's like, I just need you to lift this table, and he's like, it comes with the task. Sorry.
So basically, Treg is our greased up deaf guy from Family Guy.
But he puts like the tanning lotion on too, right? So he's
Yeah,
brown as he does it.
it's the self tanner that
Yeah.
he rubs in.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
blending in with the table and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like a coffee table now.
We love you, Treg. We love you.
We wouldn't chuck shit at him if we didn't.
Yeah.
No, it's been a busy few weeks here for us, all three of us. That's why there hasn't been that many shows. Um, so me running a department on a ship, Treg lifting things, and and you running your night cruise.
Yeah.
So apologies to all our listeners. We appreciate your patience. Such is life in the military.
And it's only gonna get busier.
Oh my god. Yeah, yeah, it is. Um, but enough of that. We're going to move on from whining about work to whining about hockey. So this episode, we have several items that we're going to just power through. So we'll talk a little bit about the Logjam and net. We'll talk about Logan Mailloux. We'll talk about some of the training camp battles that we see coming down the pipe, and there might be a few other odds and ends in there if we have some time. So why don't we just kick it off right away with the Logjam and net? And Matt, I'll hand it to you.
Even though there's a log jam in it, I think that in my opinion, it's pretty easy to think that Allen and Montembeault are going to be the two goaltenders starting out. DeSmith did have decent numbers, especially for a team that did struggle last year in the Penguins, but he still put up better numbers than Allen or Montembeault did. However, for all you advanced stats people out there, wherever you are, um, Montembeault had a very high, what saves above expected. He did very well when it comes to that, and he did show flashes. Like for me, not an advanced stats guy. I'm a watch the game kind of guy. And I can see that there were games that the guy put in quite a bit of effort. Did he get the result all the time? Not necessarily, but you could tell he was putting the effort in. And then during the off season, he played for Team Canada at the World Championships and was arguably one of their best players and arguably one of the better goaltenders of the tournament. Um, Moving forward, however, I think it's safe to think that it's going to be like a 1A 1B scenario, and I think that would be the smartest thing. There are people that are saying, why don't you go with three goaltenders? It's very rare that you ever see that happen, and with their kind of their backlog of injuries and their history of injuries and everything, keeping up another roster spot for a goaltender might not be the smartest move, especially with all the youth coming up that are trying to get these spots. So I don't know how much of a logjam there actually is. My opinion, I think Smith's on his way out. If you look across the league, I think that his contract would probably be the easiest to move. And there's multiple teams throughout the league that I believe that could use an upgrade. And I think DeSmith would fit that bill. I would say that fans have to maybe not expect much of a return. However, it's better to get a return than just to bury this guy in the AHL, which Ken Hughes already said to himself that's not what he's going to do to this guy.
Yeah. Even if they did bury him in the AHL, the savings on the cap would only be 1.1 million. So there'd still be about 700 or 800,000 up against the cap.
Yeah.
And it will go against essentially what Hughes has done. Like you said, he told his player he's not going to try and bury him. He's trying to move him.
Right.
So um,
I
I do.
even
He's the reason there is the logjam right now
yeah,
because they have the 4 goaltenders.
right. I even heard someone say they should bury Jake Allen in the AHL and be there with
Why?
with Dobesh. And I said that makes no sense. If you're thinking about the Montreal Canadiens who are starting to build up a lot of player credibility within the league. You saw what they did with Jeff Petrie. They could have waited. They could have got more for him. Instead, they send this guy home and they do it before his kids start school. And I think that kind of put a gold star next to Hughes's name. So if they were to take a veteran goaltender that's been there, through the highs and lows with this team, has shown commitment to the team, they sign him to an extension, and then all of a sudden you bury this guy in the AHL. I just think it's really the wrong move. And
Yeah.
I just don't think that's ever going to happen, right? And I don't think, and again, I don't think they're going to do it with DeSmith either. I think they're going to find a market for him, and he's going to move on, and that'll be it. I don't think he'll ever play a game for the Canadians.
Oh no, that's not my expectation whatsoever either. I know there's some talk of people wanting Allen to be traded as well because his $3.8 million on the cap, if it were to be moved out of town without taking anything back, which I think would be nearly impossible if you
Yeah,
were to trade him.
yeah,
Um, Moving that money out would solve their cap issues because the Canadians right now, with all the bonuses and everything, are 3.7 something million over the cap. So
right.
moving him out would solve that issue, but there'd still be the issue of a logjam with 3 goaltenders still there. Although more than likely Primo would go back to the AHL
Yes.
once he clears waivers.
Right.
Now,
And I find it very hard to believe that he wouldn't clear waivers. Because
yeah,
because I don't think a team at this point is ready to take an NHL position for Caden Primo. And that's not, throwing sand in the eyes of Caden Primo or anything. He's still a good young goalie, but he's still not NHL proven yet.
well, it's more about the timing of the waiver. So they would waive him at the end of training camp. Most teams have their goaltenders pretty much picked out. So I can't see anyone put a claim in on him for that reason alone. I mean,
Right.
he does have that upside of an NHL goaltender, but he hasn't really shown it yet.
No, he hasn't
Now,
shown consistency.
no, he has not. Now, with in regards to Smith, I can see some teams very interested in him.
Yes.
He's a little over 32 now, I think. He's
Yeah,
31, 32 years
32
old.
years old. Yeah.
He's got very solid numbers for a backup. I think he's around a 910 career save percentage. He's got a very good high danger save percentage. A team that needs a veteran goaltender who can play back up to at most a 1B for longer stretches could really use a guy like this, especially at 1.8 million. And the fact that he's only on that 1 year
Yeah.
left of his deal,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of commitment there. So a team like, say, Columbus,
Yeah.
who have someone like Merzlikins and it's a Russian kid, Tarasov, as the backup. He's young. He's like, I don't know, what is he, 22, 23 years
He's
old,
young. He's
Tarasov is?
young. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be better served to go back to the AHL, play a full season. Meanwhile, Merzlikins, who is talented but not very consistent,
Right.
could really use an older backup like this to help
Right.
solidify him.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm looking still at contending teams and a guy that and a team that might be able to use a goaltender. I'm looking at Tampa Bay.
Yeah, yeah. But do they have any cap? Like, are they able to take on 1.8 without having to give anything back?
That's something I'd have to look at, of course. But like when I look, I think they got that Capo Kakinen or something like that. I think that he's their backup right now with not a lot of experience. You bring in another goalie next to Vasilevsky that's got a little bit of pedigree. They saw how they look what Brian Elliott did for them for X amount of years,
Yeah.
right? Bring in a younger goalie that's on a good cap. I think they'd be just fine. Or maybe even a team like New Jersey.
Yes, that'd be a good pick too.
right?
They got a good young team. They've got a pretty solid defense core there. They're looking to really make that move. Having a solid goaltender who can play 35 games,
Yeah,
maybe 40 if you need to,
right.
and provide reliable goaltending would really make a difference for them.
Because they've still got Schmid and they've got Vitek Vanacek,
Yeah,
but which one? Both of them showed some up and downs last year. So just a suggestion. Those are two teams that I could think of right off the top of my head.
but when you look at Columbus, they're a team they're in it now. They want to make the playoffs now. Their general managers made the moves, big moves, to take that next step. I mean, they picked up Fantilli at third overall. They've got Jenner there as a third line center. They got Goudreau. They got Line. Who else? Who'd they pick up? This Provorov in a trade.
Yeah,
They picked up Severson as a free agent. They still got Werenski. This is a team that, if they're healthy, could
yeah,
really cause some problems in the Metro Division.
yeah. They definitely like to take another step. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, with all those big names, if they don't, it's time to move on from your GM. To be
Right,
brutally honest.
right. What about like Buffalo? They got Devin Levi, but then you've got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I had to say his name because it's fun to say,
Love
and
that name.
and they've got Eric Comrie, right? So both like
Yeah,
Smith's a he would be a nice complement to a guy like Levi,
I agree. Yeah,
right?
any team that needs a veteran backup, he's a perfect fit for.
Right. But like at the same time, like I'm talking about teams that are trying to make the next step. Like I'm not
Mhm.
talking about the San Jose's who could use a guy like that. I'm not talking about
No,
the Arizonas or the Chicago's that could use a guy like that. I wouldn't want to. I as a GM, I wouldn't want to send one of my players to a team like that.
no, probably not.
Right.
There's also teams that may be moving a goalie out in a separate trade who could use a backup. Like Boston might decide to split up their tandem. Then Smith would be a good fit there.
Right.
Bottom line is there's a lot of teams that could be in the mix for a guy like this, but my money is still on Columbus. If I were to make bets, I would bet on Columbus because they've got a GM who's making big swings to bring a team into the playoffs that has missed for the last couple of years.
Right.
And honestly, this is a franchise and a market that is in desperate need of a playoff appearance, let
Right.
alone a playoff series win.
Yeah, I would agree. It
So
could
there's a lot
definitely
of
happen.
yeah, there's a lot of teams out there that he's a good fit for, but that's my bet. If you were to make a bet on one team, who do you think would be?
I'd still go with New Jersey. Yeah, I still do with New Jersey. Yeah,
I think that's a good pick. To be
yeah,
honest, that if Columbus wasn't where they're at, I would probably agree with you on New Jersey. I can't do that because we're not allowed to do that.
yeah.
Trege's not here, so you and you, we have to argue, pretend to argue and fight.
Done, done.
Go gentle. All right. So the next step, Logan Mailloux.
Yeah,
Mailloux has now been cleared by the NHL to play in the NHL, which means the AHL will also allow him to play. Prior to this recent event, the AHL probably would not have allowed him to play if the
yep,
NHL hadn't given its thumbs up. But I'm going to be honest. This is one of the biggest nothing burgers of a story from the summer. If the league did not want him to play in the NHL, they would not have allowed him to sign an entry level deal.
right. And it wouldn't have, and even if he did sign it, if they were having second thoughts and second thoughts and second thoughts, they would have stepped in at some point. They wouldn't have just allowed it
Yeah.
to go as long as what it did. So I'm happy that at least we received an answer before training camps and before everyone's getting ramped up and rookie tournaments and all that kind of stuff. The only thing I'm going to say to everybody right now is to like pull back the reins on your expectations of this guy. He is
Yeah.
only played since 2019. He played 4 games with the London Knights and then COVID hit, goes overseas. What happened over there. I'm not going to repeat the whole story, of course. And then after that, he played 12 games and 59 games with the London Knights. He had a really good year last year, putting up 25 goals and 28 assists. And he had played a strong playoff, putting up 24 points in 21 games with 8 goals. However, it's still not a lot of hockey since 2019. That's 75 regular season games, 21 playoff games. I'd still like to see more of this guy. I think that Laval is the best place for him to go. And I would be more than happy seeing him there the whole year.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he's someone who's played maybe 100 games in the last few years. He
right.
needs this time.
Yeah. Right. Let him play down there. Let him find his game. Let him develop. Let him play against men and see what the guy's got. We know that he's got the skill. He's a right-handed shot defenseman, which is quite the commodity to have. And let's see what this guy has. That's all I'm going to say about the matter. Like, let's see what he's got, and let's see what he can do on the ice, because there hasn't been a lot of positive about this guy for a long time. For good reason, obviously, for good reason. I'm really hoping that they can kind of turn the page and he can kind of write a new chapter in his career and in his life as a whole. And we can look to him for his accomplishments, not what he did in his past, right? And again, that does not say anything about, I'm not condoning anything that he did. Everyone that's listening, I'm not condoning anything, right? But the NHL, the team, the London Knights, everybody involved has made it clear that he's done what he's had to do. And that's all I'm going to say. I am not the expert here. I don't know what these meetings were about. I don't know who talked. I don't know what he said. I don't know what they said. But whatever happened at the end of it, he's back eligible to play in the NHL, and we'll leave it at that.
Now, the Canadians seem to have, at the same time, been the group that made the most problems for him, and at the same time solved all these problems. So I'm going to try and explain myself a little bit here. He said he did not want to get drafted. Then
you're right in the spotlight.
Bergevin,
you're drafted.
Oh yeah,
first round pick.
Yeah, first round by the Canadians, who just came off a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah,
you couldn't have asked for a worse spotlight for a player that just did what he did. Yeah. Now, at the same time, the Canadians have also been the authors of what could have been the best case scenario for him coming out of that. Right. By switching over the management team and changing a lot of the staff, it forced the Canadians to bring in people like France Bélanger, Chantal Machabé, people like Kent Hughes, people who are forward-thinking, who are also character people who can really focus on what could fix someone like him from the mistake that he made as a kid. Now, when I say mistake, it was a criminal mistake. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's obviously something that if I was that girl's father, I would probably beat the snot out of this kid. No lies. But he is now given a second chance. And the only reason he got that second chance is because of the work that he did under the direction of the Montreal Canadiens, the London Knights, the Hunter brothers. The Hunter brothers helped him off the ice, but almost as much as they helped him on the ice.
Right.
And you pointed out some of the things that he did on the ice. He clearly made massive leaps in his game.
Yes.
Going from somebody who you were not too sure of to a guy who's playing 30 minutes a night in the OHL playoffs.
He's very much a play driving offensive defenseman that can play the body. And
Yeah.
the only thing is, he needs to learn how to play defense a little bit better.
No, he played defense fairly well at the OHL level. He
Right.
wouldn't have played 30 minutes a night in the playoffs
No,
otherwise.
no.
That doesn't mean he doesn't have a long way to go in
Yes,
learning
he
some of
still
that
has some
stuff.
gaps in his. He still has some gaps in his game.
Oh
Like
yeah.
if you get a minute left, the guy's on the ice, regardless,
Yeah.
because it's
Up or down.
either right, because it's either he's got the skill that he can be the guy that leads the rush and scores the game winner or scores the game tying goal or anything like that. So, but I said, let's see what he can do on the ice. Let's see what he can do in Laval, and let's pull back our expectations for him next year. He's not going to be a top pair defenseman in Montreal next year. I've said it. Listen to me. He's not going to be a top pair defenseman in Montreal next year. Let's pull back the expectations. Let's let him do what he can do. Enjoy his first year of pro hockey. Stay healthy, and we'll go from there. We'll talk about him next year.
Yeah. He's essentially going to become a middle of the pack defenseman in Laval
Yes.
next year.
Yeah.
So this brings me to the next portion of our show, and that's the battles in training camp. So Mailloux is going to be in that mix,
Yes.
but not as a guy who's going to steal an NHL job. Like
No.
he's a
Gonna be,
way outside chance.
he's gonna be a guy that's gonna compete. He's gonna show flashes.
Yep.
They're gonna give him some exhibition games, I'm sure. But again, he's gonna be one of those outside looking in type guys. I think that they're gonna play him in certain situations, like Reinbacher, like they're gonna want to take a look at Gustav Lidstrom and see what he has.
Mhm.
And then they're going to do a little bit of juggling with some different lines and try to do as best as they can to see who plays with who, because the defense is very log jammed right now. We don't know who's going to be there and
Yeah.
who's not. We have our thoughts. It's kind of easy to play the game of saying like, oh, your waiver's eligible, so you're going down, but that's not always the case.
No, and that is exactly true. But we know that we can say with a
We know
near
some of the guys
utmost
that are
certainty.
safe. We know some of the guys that are going to be very safe.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the right side right now. You mentioned Lidstrom, you mentioned Reinbacher, Mailloux. I think what they're going to do is they're going to use Kovacevic as kind of like a measuring point.
Yeah.
Where are everybody else compared to him right now? Because Kovacevic is one of those steady Eddie,
Yeah, he was
quiet,
consistent.
stay-at-home types. Yeah,
Yep.
very consistent. So if they can show that they can play defense similar to him and show a little bit of flash somewhere else, then that bodes well for them. Not necessarily for stealing a job this year,
Yeah,
but down the line.
yeah. Maybe it's a first call up scenario or something like that. Obviously, with Reinbacher, it's probably not going to happen because he's likely going back to Europe.
Yeah.
But
Someone like Mailloux, that is essentially what he has to do is outplay Kovacevic and then continue that play in the AHL to have any chance whatsoever of a call up.
right,
Because he's going up against guys like Lindstrom as well, who, while not a lot is expected of him, he's still, like Kovacevic, a steady defenseman who's a little bit older, has some experience, and has more of an inside track at an NHL job.
right.
There's not a ton of competition on the right side on defense. Let's be honest.
No,
While there's a lot of names, not all of them are ready.
right.
But it's the left side. That's where the real competition comes in.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you like? You're looking at guys like Arbor Jacki, Jordan Harris, Caden Gooley, Mike Matheson. How does your left side of the top six shake out?
I'd say like with how Matheson played when he was in, you've got to say that he's going to be a top pair guy again.
Oh yeah.
But it's going to depend if he's going to play on the left side or if he's going to play on the right. If you're going to go with lefts and rights, then he's your top guy. Goalie's your second. And as of right now, Harris is more than likely your third. But he can play the right side as well. I like Arbor Jacki. I know how big of a fan Trege is. I think they're a better team with Jacki in the lineup. So I would like to see Jacki on the third pair in some capacity. But it's gonna really depend on what they see in this Lidstrom kid, what they see in Barron. Like Barron is notoriously a very slow starter. He doesn't show up for camp. So being waiver eligible as well, it's not going to really bode well for him.
Yeah, if he shows up to camp and he just kills it, then he'll stay. I'm
Yeah.
talking about Barrett.
Yeah. But
But I
like,
think the big, well, for me, the big there's Barron is in the mix as well. But the big competition, like you mentioned, guys like Harris can play on the right side, so I can see a rotation coming in, so they can keep guys like Arbor Jackeye playing on the third pair
yeah,
because of what he brings. He's he's a decent skater. He's a good skater. He's got a good shot.
yeah,
He's got some a good puck movement
yeah.
skills, especially for a third pairing. But he
And you gotta think
brings that
it was his
that
first year last
element.
year too.
Yeah,
People are talking
yeah.
about this guy and they're like, oh, they can trade him or they can this or they can that. It was his first year in the league last year. And I
I'm
think
talking
that
about
he did
Harris.
pretty. No, I'm talking about Jack Guy,
Okay.
right? His first year in the league. Like everyone just calm the fuck down. Like the guy brings something to the defense core that
Yeah.
we haven't seen in this team for a while. He can hit, he can shoot, he can make plays. He's gonna make mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
His hands are about the size of a microwave. You don't want to be hit with one of those, right? You want this,
You're gonna be
right?
cooked about as fast too.
Right? Like I'd like to see him take the next step in his game. And I think with this young core, he can definitely do that. It's a
Yes.
contract year for him. I think he's gonna try to make that jump. He has an RFA, but I think he's
Mm-hmm.
gonna look for a little bit of a payday. I'm not gonna say the kid's gonna get rich or anything, but he's gonna try to he wants to remain relevant. He wants to remain with his team. His brother just got drafted by the team. He's going to want to stay with his family, like
Mm-hmm.
his family itself, really big Montreal Canadian supporters. So he's going to do what he can to stay with his team.
Oh no, absolutely. He's a guy that brings something that you don't see a lot of in the NHL anymore. That intimidation factor that he can bring, and he can play the game.
Yes.
He's kind of a throwback to Lyle Odeline. For older Habs fans who are watching, you'll know who I'm talking about. For younger listeners, uh, Google Lyle Odeline. You'll see what I'm talking about.
But if we want to start going on a little bit more about some of the camp battles, I think one right off the bat is going to be who's going to play up on the top line with Suzuki and Caulfield. Is
Oh,
there's a
that's a
lot of people,
tough call.
right? There's a lot of people that say the easy pick is to put Doc up there to take him out of the center position because you've got Monahan that could win faceoffs
Mhm.
and how good they play together. However, Doc was brought in to be a center. I think they want to use him as a center. I think he can drive his own line, and that's probably the best place for him. I wouldn't be against that line being together because I think it'd be a really good trio. They were proven that they can play together. But then it's going to really depend from there who gets that spot. I have an idea of thinking that maybe a guy like Monahan, put him up on the top line, get as
Yeah.
much value and get as many points out of the guy. You see where he is come trade deadline, you see where the team is trade deadline, and maybe you maximize the value you get back for him.
Yeah, no, I agree with that idea. That's a good way to go
And then
because
and you also have a guy that can win faceoffs when Suzuki's not. And then
yeah,
they can and then
well,
and then they can
weak side,
shift,
strong side.
right? And then they can
Yeah, weak
shift.
side, strong side.
Yeah.
I think that's a good option, especially when it comes to um, padding his stats a little bit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want him to get those points, and I know you mentioned that see where the team is come trade deadline. I don't think it really matters.
Right.
They're moving him no matter what.
And like I know people have made the debate, well, put Newhook up there, put Slavkovsky up there. Slavkovsky's coming off an injury and he's coming off like a less than impressive first year in the league, but the team
Mm-hmm.
struggled as a whole anyway, and he was injured. Right? You don't take that guy. I don't care how much work he's put in. You don't throw him right in to the Montreal media and say, now you're the top line winger with your captain of the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
So I think the expectation for him, maybe start him out on the third, maybe start him out on the second with Doc, see what the kid's got, and see if this work that he was putting in with his doing whatever he was doing blind or whatever the hell he was doing or walking on water or whatever the hell work that he put in, see if he can see if it actually shows a product on the ice and it just doesn't look good for the cameras, right?
Yeah, you want him to ease into the roster and then work his way up. I agree.
Yeah.
What if on the first line, instead of a Monahan, you have someone like RHP? Because Harvey Pinard last season looked really good on that line.
He did, but the only thing is he was put on that line at a necessity.
True.
Right?
But he
He
did
did right.
produce.
He did produce, he did earn his contract. However, it was still a necessity type thing.
Yes.
And I
But he
think that
produced.
he could bring more energy to say a third line role with a guy like Dvorak,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? And maybe on that other side have another energy guy in Brendan Gallagher who can play and they can play a defensive role. Both those wingers go in, they'll go to the net and they'll go into the dirty areas. So it could
Yeah.
be one of those grinded out type lines. And
Yeah.
that would leave you your second line being Doc Anderson and Slavkovsky. There's some size for you. Some size with some guys that can move.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that would work too. I'm thinking
Oh
of
shit,
a line.
I'm still forgetting about Newhook too.
Well, Newhook's in the mix for top six. That's my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah,
But I'm thinking I'm going with RHP on my mind right now. And I'm thinking, what about a line of Harvey Pinard, Evans, and Ylonen on a fourth line?
right.
That could work.
Right.
That means Pizzetta is going to be the odd man out in this,
Yeah.
and you can rotate him in. But I think that's a good speedy line with some uh, energy, work ethic, a little bit of offensive skill too,
Right.
and a ton of speed.
Right. I think it's gonna really come down to some of these veteran players, some of these guys have been around for a
Mm-hmm.
little while, what they bring to camp, and are they going to show up to camp thinking that their spot's going to be safe? Or are they going to show up and perform? And I'm talking about
Yeah.
guys like Armia. I'm even talking about a guy like Jake Evans.
Yeah. Well, Evans isn't known for someone to coast, so I think Armia is the one. If you're going to be thinking of something like that to be
Yep.
an issue, he's the player you would think of.
Yep.
And we talked about Allen being someone that people have talked about burying in the minors.
Mm-hmm.
Armia, I think, is at that point now where it might be worth it just to bury him in the minors. I know you're not going to get any real cap savings there,
Yeah.
but it opens up a roster spot for guys like Emil Heineman,
Right.
who showed amazing things when he finally came to North America at the end of
Yeah.
last season.
Yeah. I'm an Evans fan. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
But I'd like to see
more.
I like to see a little bit more. And it's in like if they start playing guys at the set, like if they play say Suzuki, Doc, and you take Monahan, put him in a center position where he's going to be best, he's going to produce his best. Well, that means he's going on the third line or the fourth line, and then you've got Dvorak, right? That bumps Evans out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And we didn't even mention one player that I think is really going to be pushing hard because this is his chance, his real, I guess, last chance, and that's Elias Anderson.
Right.
That's someone I can see really pushing things at camp. We talk about competition at camp. If anyone has motivation to compete at camp this September, it's him.
Yeah. I'm even looking at Ylonen because he's not waiver eligible anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Even if he puts up a performance and they put him down, like he might find a job somewhere else. So based on a strong performance.
Yeah. And for anyone listening that's still listening at this point, waiver eligibility is going to be a massive factor in whatever decision this team makes because they don't want to be losing
Right.
any of these players. These are assets that still have value and could be traded for decent value. You look at
Yes.
Ylonen, a guy who's shown he can play in the NHL. That's worth a decent round pick, like a second, third round pick.
Yeah.
what do you get if you lose them on waivers? Nothing. So you don't want
Right.
to be losing guys like that.
Yeah.
Whereas Elias Anderson, you sign him on a 1 year flyer. If he clears waivers, if he doesn't earn a spot in the NHL, you send him down to Laval. If he gets claimed on waivers, he's whatever.
Yeah.
No, no, no
He was
real
never,
loss.
yeah, he was never really part of the plan. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to really pay attention to the players that the Canadians have either drafted and developed or just recently developed. Guys like Anderson, they're behind the eight ball already. They really have to step it up. So that's why when I mention him as someone to watch, it's that level of competition that he has to bring. It has to be two notches above everybody else.
Right. Right.
Is there any one player you think that they might have a chance of competing and winning a spot?
I'd say Ylonen more than likely. I think he,
Okay.
I think he's probably the closest to earning that spot, but it would probably take somebody else out of the lineup to do that you would expect to be there. And like I'm
Mm.
looking at Harvey Pinard, like I know what he did, and I think he's a lock to make the team, but being waiver eligible again, like there's a lot of questions when it comes to their the way that they're going to use that.
Yeah, no, I think you're bang on there. Oh wait, no, I'm supposed to disagree. You're so wrong. Why are you saying stuff like that?
Yeah,
Grr growl.
I don't expect a lot of people are talking about like Owen Beck. And you know what? Love Owen Beck, but I think the best place for him to be, unfortunately, play out his last year in the OHL.
It didn't hurt
Right,
Suzuki to play an
right,
extra year.
right. Dominate that league, and you never know. Like, I don't know how Peterborough is going to be as a team this year. I'm not sure what
He'll
their
most
strengths
likely be
are.
traded.
Right, I don't know what their strengths are this year. I know they had a
Yeah,
good I know they had a good team with him on it last year, but I know a lot of the guys that have moved on from that team. So I don't know what it's going to be like this year. Usually when you get a team that goes that deep, they're not the same team next year. So he could
yeah,
be one of those guys that's moved at the deadline to a contender.
yeah. No, absolutely. He'll show up. He'll play his heart out, and then end up getting traded. It that's I think that's the best bet for him. It didn't
Yeah,
hurt Suzuki when he
right,
went back,
right.
and they play a similar type of game. So
Yeah.
why not?
And I
Why
know a
not let
lot
him
of
do it?
people were talking about Joshua Roy possibly making the team. I still think best scenario. Same thing is for Mesher. Mesher didn't really light up the OHL last year. I know, yes, he was playing on a shit team,
Yeah,
but again, I think the best place for Mesher would be send him back to the OHL, let him do his thing down there, let him learn the game a little bit better. And same thing for Joshua Roy, although he'll be in Laval. Play him in a top six role and don't worry about having to bring him up and play him in a bottom six role in Montreal.
yeah. No, I think patience is a virtue, and it'll be a key in this rebuild. We're at the stage of the rebuild now where everyone wants to see something happen. They want to
Yeah.
see, the kids that were drafted to take that big step and become stars or whatever it is. But this is the point where you can either make or break a player. You don't want to rush them. Look
Yes.
what they've done with players in the past when they've rushed them.
Yeah. But it's also getting to the point where the guys that are drafted are going to have to start standing out
Yes.
because you look at the next few years and like the 2024 draft, you get a first, second, two thirds, a fourth, two fifths, a sixth, and three sevenths. Yes, some of those picks are going to move. However, you look at 2025, two firsts, two seconds, a third, two fourths, a fifth, sixth, and a seventh. So like they have, and for years they have just been like stockpiling. And it's not necessarily they've been moving the picks to get anything other than New Hook. It's been we'll pick the player, we'll pick the player, we'll pick the player. So they've stocked the shelves, and some of the players that they've picked those players have stuck around, or they've done quite well. They've got some late round gems, but it's to the point now where some of these guys are going to have to really stand out, and the organization itself is going to have to be like, okay, these are the guys we're moving forward with. These are the guys we're going to package to make the team better today. Because you start looking at, say, the 2020 going into the 2025 season with that draft with 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and you've already got a team that's starting to get a little bit more established. Some of these young guys are taking on the bigger roles, etc. And you've got, like, going into that say 25-26 season, there's probably going to be guys that are going to be on their way out. A lot of guys on the last year of their contracts. Like, that's going to be a big year for the team.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, I think this is going to be a good training camp to watch. It's going to be fun to watch. There's going to be a lot of really good young players to pay attention to, and then to follow through the season afterwards, because maybe 2 of these players that we've talked about tonight will make the team.
Yeah.
There might be a third outside chance of a third, but 2 is a safe bet.
Yeah. Who do you think?
So,
who do you think?
who do I think what?
Who do you think is, like, their days in Montreal are pretty much done?
Anybody over the age of 27, except for Matheson, really.
Yeah.
Anybody else, their days are numbered. Let's put it that way.
Do you think a guy like Wideman is on the team?
No,
Or
I think he's.
Laval. Laval are traded.
I think they'll try to trade him. I don't
think
know
so
if
too.
anyone's going to take him. I don't think anyone's going to really take him. So they'll put him on waivers, and you might get a team like the Sharks that pick him up for nothing.
Right. Right.
So,
I think he'd be a great option for Laval if that's the way that it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because there's your top line right-handed shot right there, power play guy, and it's a guy that's a veteran guy that Mailloux can be there with.
Yeah.
Right.
Or at the very least, someone who can play a veteran's role, fill in a second pairing, give a little bit of tips, pointers, but more than likely, I think he ends up being in a different city.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably the smartest thing to do.
So that pretty much covers everything we were going to talk about in this episode. I know it's the first one in almost 2 weeks, and we're going to try and be a little bit more regular. But so I want to thank everybody's for their patience, for holding out this long. We've gotten some emails and some messages of support, knowing how busy we all are. So I want to thank everybody who sent those in. Matt, do you have anything last thoughts you want to share?
No, just thanks to everyone for all the messages and everything. And, like, we're sorry that we can't get out the content that we want to get out all the time. Obviously, our careers come first. Being in the military, that our schedules are a little bit all over the place sometimes. But there's a lot of hockey coming soon. We're going to have a lot more to talk about. We're going to have the opportunity to do more shows. We're going to have a lot more to talk about. So thanks for choosing us as being one of your many Canadians podcasts you listen to. And again, thanks so much for the support.
I'm going to echo everything Matt just said. Thank everybody for tuning in, listening, supporting us, making us part of your rotation of podcasts, and most of all for the interaction that we share with everybody on social media. We really appreciate it. So thank you for listening. And remember, if you're